Welcome to this explainer. So, today we're taking a deep dive into the rigorous biophysics behind some of the absolute biggest and, let's be real, sometimes most misunderstood health buzzwords out there. We hear words like energy, frequency, and vibration getting thrown around constantly in the wellness space, right? But today we're going to ground them in hard science. We're looking at the actual anatomy, the moving fluids, and light-sensitive signaling that actually make our bodies tick. Okay, let's just dive right into it.
So, the big question, are energy, frequency, and vibration just wellness buzzwords? Well, for a long time, the whole concept of a biofield has suffered from a ton of ambiguity. It kind of drifted back and forth between careful scientific hypotheses and, honestly, highly speculative metaphysical claims. Because of that, it's incredibly easy to just write off phrases like energy fields as mystical science fiction.
But the answer to that question is a resounding no. These concepts are literally the measurable biophysics of the future. We are actively replacing speculative metaphysics with the empirical reality of how our bodies actually function on a microscopic cellular level. I mean, think about it. The body already produces measurable electrical activity in the brain, the heart, the nerves, the muscles. And these activities, they're completely inseparable from things like ion gradients, membrane potentials, and tissue conductivity. This isn't magic, guys. It's modern systems biology.
To make sense of all this, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First up, the biofield. Science, not magic. Then we'll cover fascia, basically your body's electromechanical web. Third, frequencies, and how light literally controls cells. Fourth, we'll talk about energy flowing through conductive fluids and fields. And finally, number 5, what this all means for the medicine of the future.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the biofield. Science, not magic.
Here, we're explicitly shifting our focus away from the idea of invisible, ethereal auras and moving directly toward measurable physiology. I really want you to absorb this quote from our source material. Any biofield is not an ethereal entity detached from anatomy, but a distributed consequence of known biological processes. That is absolutely crucial. A biofield is just what happens when you combine membrane potentials, connective tissue mechanics, ionic transport, fluid flow, and autonomic regulation. It's an operational concept. So, instead of asking if an invisible aura exists, we really should be asking how measurable electromagnetic, photonic, mechanical, and fluid dynamic processes form this massive distributed regulatory network inside you.
Moving right along to Section 2, fascia, your body's electromechanical web.
Now, for a spatially distributed field effect to actually exist in biology, it needs a material interface. It needs hardware, and that hardware is your fascia. The contrast between how we used to view this tissue and the modern scientific reality is honestly night and day. The old view basically treated fascia like passive saran wrap that just bundled up your muscles and organs. But recent scholarship, it's completely upended that idea. The new view reveals fascia as a continuous, highly functional network. It's hydrated, it's collagen-rich, mechanically sensitive, and packed with neural, vascular, and immune structures. It's essentially the body's fiber optic and electrical internet. How cool is that?
So let's break down how this communication actually happens. Step 1 is mechanical loading, and this could be anything, a physical movement, taking a deep breath, or even just manual touch. Step 2, that tension doesn't just stay local. Because fascia is continuous, the strain and pressure propagate through interconnected tissues all across your body. Then we hit Step 3, mechanotransduction. This is where physical vibrations and tension actually translate directly into chemical and cellular signals through things like integrans and cytoskeletal elements. It can alter inflammatory processes, tissue remodeling, and get this, even gene expression, meaning your physical movement literally changes how your cells behave.
Okay, on to Section 3, frequencies, controlling cells with light. We've talked about physical tension, but now let's focus on frequencies, specifically how different wavelengths of light interact with our biology. To really get this, we have to look at chromato-optogenetics. That sounds like a mouthful, but it's the rigorous science of using specific wavelengths of light to regulate cellular behavior with extremely high temporal and spatial precision. Think of it kind of like a highly selective biological remote control. Now, while strict optogenetics involves engineered photosensitive components, it proves a massive fundamental concept for us. Light is not just some passive environmental background.
Under the right conditions, photons are actually active regulators of our physiological machinery. Light acts as an exquisite regulator of ion flux, membrane excitability, intracellular signaling, gene transcription, and even tissue-level function. Because different wavelengths penetrate your tissues differently, they activate entirely different downstream pathways. This is exactly why the spectral composition of your environment, meaning the exact frequencies of light you're exposed to every day, has such a profound influence on your autonomic tone, your cellular metabolism, and your overall health.
Let's keep going. Section 4. Energy, conductive fluids, and fields.
Now we're shifting gears to the conductive rivers that are constantly flowing inside us. This provides a really rigorous explanation for what people are often vaguely referring to when they talk about energy flow. We're borrowing a conceptual vocabulary here called magnetohydrodynamics. Okay, yes, that is a very heavy biophysics term normally used in astrophysics and plasma science, but cautiously it applies to human physiology too. It gives us a formal language to describe exactly how moving, electrically conductive fluids interact with magnetic fields right inside our own bodies.
Our bodies are absolutely full of these moving ionic solutions. We're talking about your blood plasma, your lymph, cerebral spinal fluid, and interstitial fluid. These fluids exhibit electrical properties that are incredibly relevant to transport and cellular signaling. When your circulatory and respiratory dynamics constantly push these conductive fluids around, and when your excitable tissues naturally generate electrical currents, they interact with each other in a highly dynamic, measurable way.
So, let's walk through an active example of how this plays out in your day-to-day life. Let's say you do something as simple as stretching. Step 1. You create mechanical deformation of the fascial planes. Step 2. This changes the pressure gradients inside your tissues. Step 3. That actually forces fluid movement. Your lymph, your interstitial fluid, all those ionic solutions literally shift. And step 4, this fluid movement actively alters tissue conductivity and local electrical potentials. You are quite literally reshaping your body's electrical and fluid dynamic environment just by reaching up and stretching.
Which brings us to Section 5, the medicine of the future.
So, we've broken down the biofield, the fascial web, light frequencies, and conductive fluid energy. Now let's tie it all together and see what this paradigm shift actually means for the future of health. The future is whole-person physiology. For decades, medicine has relied heavily on a reductionist molecular account, basically treating the body as just a collection of isolated organs or separate symptoms. But this new framework merges that traditional approach with a network-based view. It proves that organism-wide regulation actually emerges from the reciprocal interactions among your connective tissue, your ionic media, excitable cells, photobiological inputs, and autonomic control systems. It is all one beautifully integrated dynamic web.
And what you really need to take away from this is that this science supports incredibly actionable, evidence-led interventions. We're talking about things like manual therapies, movement, and targeted breath practices, intentionally designing the spectral light in our environments, and connective tissue therapies. These aren't just alternative fringe ideas anymore. They are scientifically grounded methods for modulating your body's measurable variables, things like heart rate variability, inflammatory biomarkers, and even pain perception.
Which leaves us with this final thought. We now know that your body isn't just some machine made of disconnected parts. It is a highly sensitive, deeply connected web of energy, moving conductive fluids, light-responsive cells, and mechanical tension. Every single movement you make, every breath you take, and every light source you sit under interacts with this matrix. So if you hold the power to influence this incredible electromechanical web, how will you choose to tune it today? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep moving, and I'll catch you on the next one.